I did want to talk about that House Bill 3445 and just talk about fund balance, quite frankly, overall. Uh, we every session, it seems, or at least it seems like every session, I can't even say recent session because it just seems like it comes up all the time in terms of the legislators and different folks, even community members looking at the fund balance, if they can find it, if they really understand it, what it all means. So I'm just going to flip through some of the screens and then open it up for just a general discussion with all of you. And this does say fund balance bill set for hearing next week. This is dated because I did want to remind y'all to just keep up with the most current. This is the one that I like, but it is at least a couple of weeks old. And again, I hope the screen shifted to fund balance bill set for hearing next week, the TASBO information.
Yes.
Okay, great. So Amanda, for any newbies out there or somewhat newbies, I hope, like Josh mentioned, be sure that you're getting the Texas School Policy Network news. Be sure also that you're getting the updates from Amanda at least once or twice a week, especially with the session going on. So this is the bill that was referred to, and they have posted this, and actually I'm going to go to it from here, but I could go through it from the actual agenda item for us, explaining fund balance. And this was a document that was put together. I did love the fact that it's a TASBO, TASB, and TASA document. Okay, so what, and it's got very simple questions and then not so simple, but what is fund balance? How much fund balance do school districts have? It even talked about the difference between a June 30th and an 8/31 district. So keep that in mind. It's just a 2-page document. I highly encourage y'all to take a quick read. And then, what do we need fund balance for? And of course it varies, right? On this almost second to last paragraph, I should say. So it can depend on anticipated cost, on cash flow needs, on risk tolerance. The GFOA, go out there and check out that website if you haven't in a little while, recommends relatively larger fund balance for the following. So are there natural disasters? What do your deductibles look like? Should you set aside for insurance type deductibles? There are some items mentioned there. The governmental entities whose revenue is more likely impacted by a potential economic recession. For us, a potential economic recession is loss of kids. The attendance, as we talked about during the budgeting tools discussion, a lot of you are dealing with just lower numbers in terms of lower numbers because you're all competing for the same number of students in the Region 1 area, and lower numbers because of the pandemic. Some of the little babies, the pre-Ks and the Ks and even the first, parents just, I'm not dealing with either remote or face-to-face. I'm just going to wait it out a year. And there's even bills related to that, what parents can do in terms of bringing their kids back to school. The self-funded type of insurances. I got a call this week, a couple of calls this week from a superintendent and just asking for additional ideas on the ESSER, on the ESSER 2 and the ESSER 3. I said, well, you all have to have a lot of flexibility. Well, for one, we all know that we want this money to be supplemental, but you also want flexibility with the money. Let me spend it the way I need. Some of your health insurance funds may be in the red. And so trying to go after health insurance premium adjustments increases may not be the best thing to do. And it may instead be an infusion of dollars. And there's big dollars out there with ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. Get to a point where everything is breaking even or even having a fund balance. But again, you need to be able to use those dollars. So the push for that. How does reliance on local property taxes impact cash flow? So give that some thought. Some of you are having higher collection of taxes than even your average year. And that's good because we really weren't sure about the pandemic. Now, businesses closing down may just be in certain categories that it's higher. And then it goes into a little discussion about why the fiscal year matters. And again, for those of you, there are some of us that stress a little bit more than others of us. But remember, as you're putting together your budget, you have budget amendments are just a blessing, because you can pretty much, and they're needed. We don't know everything. You won't know everything by your June 30th fiscal year end, and you won't know everything by your August 31st, obviously, fiscal year end. So people get a little bit too worried with the June 30th fiscal year ends. What are the benefits of having sufficient fund balance? Good points here. It definitely can prevent districts from facing borrowing costs. And I actually, unfortunately, have known of districts that have a line of credit because of the timing of their payroll. They actually need the money for payroll purposes. So be careful about that. And well, it talks about some of the other allowed for rapid repair of buildings and minimal service interruption. I want to say that when we had that 100-year hail issue in McAllen, I want to say it took us 2 years to get the monies for that. And obviously the repairs weren't going to wait for 2 years. It may have been longer than that, because it was back and forth, what we thought, what the appraiser thought, what some independent person thought about how much damages we really had. Of course, a lot of you right now are dealing with just COVID related expenditures. The CNP program was another thing that I mentioned to the superintendent. Your CNP programs probably, or a lot of them, I'm not saying 100% of them, took a hit during 1920, because you were, obviously you were not feeding 100% of your kids or 90% of your kids. And yet you had staff, you had higher meal costs, food cost, I should say. So in his case, I pretty much said, you really, at a cabinet level type meeting, I would go function by function and say which functions need the money, so that you have a plan ready for this use of ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funds, which again impacts your fund balance, because how much have you been able to add or use of your fund balance? Okay, I'm going to try and go back now. So this is the 2-page document. I'm going to try and go back to that. The resources is that 2-page document. On the 21-22 budgeting tools books, this one takes a little while, and Oscar, be sure I'm on the budgeting tools book. It takes a little while to open, at least on my machine, because it's just huge. It's a 1,500-page report. But when you're talking about fund balance, one of the things that I've said to y'all before, go and compare yourself to a district that's your size. Los Fresnos, I think it's Los Fresnos, Rio, Sherryland, there's some districts, and we can see this even on the attendance reports, but I'm not going to flip over there right now because it'll slow this down. But go in here, and again, you've got your 60 some odd page report for budgeting tools. And then I should say budgeting tools book, 60 some odd page report by district. But this is the one this large one says, okay, here's Brooks that joined us at Region 1. Here is Brownsville. Of course, Brownsville can be compared to United pretty easily. So what is Brownsville's fund balance, revenues, expenditures, ratios, enrollment, staff compare to United? Now, this is an overall comparison. I'm not saying by any means that y'all are identical, but how does a fund balance compare with one of your districts that is similarly sized versus a districts across the state that are similarly sized? And hopefully opening up the conversation with your fellow CFOs, whether here at Region 1 or whether across the state, somewhere across the state. So again, the trending on that. So this gives you the fund balance for everyone. If you're just kind of curious, when legislators do talk about, because we did already have some soups, and actually Dr. Chavez asked the superintendents and different things. I hope if you're not on his list that your soup is sharing that information with you, but I think a lot of the CFOs are on Dr. Chavez's listserv. he's asked already, well, what does your fund balance look like? I think he asked at the 110 level. And then of course it did, the latest on the bill was having, not having questions, I guess, asked too much if you're at 180 days of fund balance. But with this report, you can quickly tell. I mean, if I look at Donna here, then they've got about a third based on expenditures. They've got about a third, maybe 100, and we could actually do the actual calculation, but you can quickly look at, well, how much of expenditures do I have? And here we go here. So again, you can quickly compare to all of your colleagues and take a quick look at that. The other report that I'm going to hopefully get to here pretty quick is when we go back to fund balance, and maybe I do need to come back over here, and then I'll go back to the other one. What are you reporting on your annual financial and compliance report, on your audit, and really your AFR or your CAFR, your comprehensive annual financial report? Does your fund balance section actually describe what you are needing dollars for? Are you putting all of it or too much of it in unassigned? Are decisions being made as far as the classifications of fund balance? So if for those of you that maybe don't go in there and look too often, here is the database of the prior annual financial and compliance reports. So because our report over here, like Point Isabel here, I'm giving you total, we are giving you total fund balance. I don't know on PI. I know if I go to the statements y'all give TA, whether it is fund balance, whether it is unassigned, whether it is assigned, and so forth, the different classifications. So be on the lookout for that. And as I do that, then let me see if I can scroll. Where am I? Yeah, let me hopefully do this a little. I'm not going to go as fast as I want because I know I'll get a little, not that I should, but I'll get a little delay versus just doing this with all of you. Of course, you should always be looking at your expenditures, period, in different manners. So this is the report I wanted to get to, the allotment report and how you're spending it. So I've run into situations where I know that you underspent on a federal, or I shouldn't say federal, excuse me, on the state program allotment. But if I go and try and tie that to the financial statement, there is not even that category on the financial statement on either the AFR or the CAFR. So definitely watch that. You know, here's an underspent category for a district. So they should have at least that. You also need to figure out, is it just this year, or do I have to go back and look at 2 other years? And where you place that on the AFR again, or CAFR. So keep all of that in mind. But the budgeting tools give you reports to help you. We hope to help you with some of these classifications of your fund balance. So again, here's a TA website for that, budgeting tools. So then I got curious last night and late yesterday. I thought, okay, I'm going to go pull some board policies. And I did look at several of the CE locals, and I definitely liked trying to keep up with a few too many things. Anyway, let me go back to over here. Westlaco's, hopefully y'all are seeing CE local. What Westlaco's does, and here's the date, right? Date issued. So some of you did have 2008. And a lot of you don't have, because I want to remind you, do you even have a board policy that talks about fund balance? And some of you do not. Fund balance is not, it is not a section or subsection on CE local. So if you have it, it's going to be on your CE local. Please check it out. Some of you are using a 2008 update. Several of you were. Andres's is 20, well, sorry, Andres, Westlaco's is 2011. But what I really, I loved, there were different things I loved about it. It's a 3-pager, not 16 or 20 like some of our other policies. It actually talks about the fund balance, the definition, general fund classification, and then it tells us what would be going in the non-spendable, restricted, committed, unassigned, and so forth. So on the state program allotment dollars, then you're probably talking about restricted. But again, if I go and look, and there's sometimes some debate between us, okay, but is it restricted or is it committed? Well, my whole point with that is place it somewhere other than unassigned, but restricted would be probably my, let me see, I'm looking at here. It even gives you examples. So, you know, is it restricted, committed, or assigned? And for something like that, I would still think restricted. And again, I know some of us have had some discussion and debatable type items. And here's your unassigned. So, and his wording, some of the wording, I think I even wrote it down yesterday. Some of the wording had optimum, this was another district, and it was McAllen, I believe. Optimum fund balance amount prescribed by TA. So some of you, even when you address fund balance, you didn't stick to a day, right? Because TA does change. Do you need 75 days? Do you need 90? If something happens with this bill, will you need 110 or 180? Brownsville had unreserved and undesignated. So they actually said in these two classifications, we want, and they actually wrote approximately 75 days. So again, just go and look at your CE local policy. And first of all, see if you even have a fund balance reference. And then second of all, how is this lining up to compare to this House Bill 3445, right? That's in the works. I'm sorry, guys. Okay. Now, Sci-Fairs, and even, you know, when I thought about looking at some of them, I thought, man, I'm going to look at some of the districts upstate. And sometimes we know of districts because they're very involved with the TASBO Connect, right? So go out there and look at districts that you can just tell, yeah, these folks are really monitoring everything closely. So actually, this one had one of the more recently updated CE locals. It's as of July 7, 2020. And it does talk about the fund balance. Theirs is a percent based. It's not days based. So the district shall maintain a balance in the general fund equal to at least 25% of its general operating expenditures, excluding any non-spendable fund balance. So again, know the classifications because it can confuse any of us. If the board determines this fund balance cannot be obtained for the proposed budget, it shall be the goal of the board to reach the balance within a specified period within 3 years. So you can really tailor this for what administratively, obviously, you're comfortable with and what your district is comfortable with, your cabinet folks that they're all aware, and then of course your board also. And then this one got into the classifications or definitions related to GASB 54. And we all have to keep up with the GASBs. Every so often we do not necessarily, or we're a little behind on that. So non-expendable, again, not as much details as Westlaco and Andres's, which again, I appreciated. And then it talked about the order of spending shall be to reduce funds in the following order. So that was another thing that was kind of interesting. A great thing about any district, especially for those of you that are newer to school finance, is you literally just put Westlaco ISD board policy and boom, it just comes up. It's one of the first Google searches. So you can do this for any district. And once you know, like in this case, it's going to be CE. You can look at the legal, you can look at the local, but the local is really what we're talking about here. What is each district doing? Okay, that's Sci-Fairs. Then I went back and I thought, okay, the other problem, the reason that people start getting into issues with fund balance is something that's found in CE legal. Now, legal already tells you that it wouldn't have mattered if I looked up McAllen's, Sherry Lynn's, Westlaco's, San quite frankly. This is the legal policy. So this financial exigency, this is what, you do not, it even references, the board may adopt a resolution declaring a financial exigency for the district under one or more of the following conditions. And one of them is a decrease of more than 20% in unassigned general fund balance. This is the last thing you want to do. So look at it to be sure you're not doing anything that causes you to go here. Sometimes it's like advanced warnings that we see. Take a look at this again. These policies on the very plus side, like this one, is almost just a page. And then, because again, these are the things that may cause you to start having, they kind of definitely list some things that could cause you to start having fund balance, and just, the very unfortunate term of circling the drain. So different circumstances they're listed. Let me see what else I might have. This is just this was also on a more recent, well, actually, here's the email. Last Friday, Amanda sent out some more info on fund balance. And this was just a few, and I'm clicking here, but it's on that other link. Just some other documents that they had looked at or were starting to put together questions about fund balance. So there was somewhere that I read, and let me just, I can't, my eyes are so bad. There was somewhere that I read that it talked about 220 districts being on the 630 fiscal year, but this one does talk about 267. I still think that number grows all the time. It's been a practice to go to a July 1 fiscal year start date since 2002. So this is just a quick Q&A on fund balance, and it's short and sweet. So far it's only 3 questions, and I don't doubt that TASBO will keep adding to this. So I just wanted to be sure you were aware of that. And then I think the last thing I have here, this is, as far as I could tell, the latest publication on Texas Public School Finance Overview. For some of you that have been in this business as long as I have, maybe even longer, and of course some of you definitely fewer years, I know a few of us, even at certain districts, we even had the one that it was pretty much the template, which, by the way, I think I just saw a few days ago that there is a new template out there. It was a manual calculation. And so if you really wanted to understand what was going on with Omar's template, you try to do the calculations manually. And it told you exactly, you're going to take this and you're going to multiply it by this, and you're going to multiply it or divide it by this. And so I kind of wish TEA would update that for us. Of course, as much as we thought school finance was going to be less complicated, it definitely did not. It definitely did not. I'm going to come up here and check any. If not meeting the expenditure rate, the difference should be set aside in the fund balance. I agree, restricted. Okay, great. So there's at least a few of us, like I say, I've heard different discussions on that. So what I just shared, and I should be back on the agenda, I'm thinking, Oscar, and actually I can stop the share period. But, for folks that are new, especially, you want to go in there and look at some of these TA resources, of course, for all calculations, but the fund balance is one of those. It is hard to try and talk to folks. I've mentioned this before, and it doesn't apply to all of our districts and all of our charters, but it is hard to try to talk to folks about, we need more money, and we've got a year's worth of fund balance. And I think we have at least 2 districts that do. And then we've got districts that very healthy fund balance over 6 months. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily well, it's just hard to convince folks, right? I need more money. But have a plan for the money. So yes, it's already been built up for a year, but it's because, for instance, I can't get a bond passed. So I may have to be building that building with cash, which way back, some of our districts actually did. So I'm gonna pretty much wrap it up there. Oh, and only because, of course, this is on my mind too. And don't forget about your personal fund balance. It's amazing how quickly the years go by. And then we need to obviously, because we do, I think, I can't speak for everybody, but I can certainly speak for myself. You know, I'm like the plumbing or plumber with the worst pipes at home, or mechanic with the worst vehicle in the garage. I've taken care of a lot of districts and hopefully region 1-2, definitely region 1-2 in terms of, you know, the everything related to their finances, but then sometimes we forget to take care of our own, as we really should be doing, you know, watching out for ourselves too. All right, folks, y'all go and have a really great and safe, and I hope restful weekend. I'm glad to see the majority of our group was here. Y'all take care, and thank y'all.